Hello, my dear students. A very warm welcome to all of you to Sri Jayendra Rank Zone. I am your friend and mentor for the subject Business Economics. In this lecture, we'll continue with Chapter 2, that is Theory of Demand and Supply, and all the coming concepts will be covered in the coming lectures. This is lecture number 6. So, students, we are continuing with indifference curve analysis. Over here, you should understand that indifference curve analysis is also known as ordinal utility analysis. So it is known as ordinal utility analysis. That means what? According to the ordinal utility analysis, utility is a relative concept. Just write along with me. Utility is a relative concept. It is not an absolute concept. It is not an absolute concept. That means what? This means utility can be compared but it can't be measured. This means utility can be compared but can't be measured. I believe you must have understood this. Let us begin with the text. So, very popular alternative and a more realistic method of explaining consumers' demand is the ordinal utility approach, that is the IC analysis, indifference curve. This approach to consumer behavior is based on consumers' preferences. It believes that human satisfaction, being a psychological phenomena, cannot be measured quantitatively in monetary terms, as was attempted by Marshall's utility analysis. So Marshall's analysis is known as cardinal analysis, but we are following ordinal utility analysis over here. In this approach, it is felt that it is much easier and scientifically more sound to order preferences than to measure them in terms of money. The consumer preferences is therefore an ordinal concept based on the ordering of preferences compared with Marshall's approach of cardinality. So, ordinal approach is more practical and it is preferable. Ordinal utility concept is more practical and preferable. It is more accurate. Let us shift to the assumptions underlying the IC approach, indifference curve approach. Number one, over here, we assume that consumers are rational. This is the first assumption, that consumers are rational. This means what? They calculate cost benefit analysis before taking any decision. So they possess full information about the product and the market. Number two, the IC analysis assumes that utility is only ordinarily expressible. That means what? Ordinarily Expressible means what? That it can be compared but can't be measured. It can be compared but can't be measured. The consumer is capable of ranking all conceivable combinations of goods according to the satisfaction they fetch, that is yield. Thus, if he is given various combinations of products A, B, C, D, E, he can rank them as first preference, second preference, and so on. However, if a consumer happens to prefer A to B, this means what? This means that he cannot tell quantitatively how much he prefers A to B. He can compare, but quantity wise, he can't say. Next is consumer choice is assumed to be transitive. Transitive. Transitive means what? That if a consumer prefers a combination A to B and B to C, that means A is better than C. If a consumer is preferring A, then B, then C, that means the consumer will prefer A in terms of C. In other words, he has a consistent combination pattern. He can't say that C is better than A. The consumer can't say that C is better than A. If he does so, he is behaving irrationally. If he does so, he is behaving irrationally. So, if combination A has more commodities than combination B, this means what? A must be preferred over B. Why? Because A will give more satisfaction. A will give more satisfaction as compared to B. Okay? The next topic is indifference curve. That is the IC curve. The next topic is IC curve. So, what is an indifference curve? An indifference curve shows the various combinations of two commodities, basically, which give equal amount of satisfaction to the consumer. You can write over here an IC curve, that is an indifference curve, shows various combinations of two commodities which give equal amount of satisfaction to the consumer. Let's see the text now. What are indifference curves? So, it is the ordinal analysis of demand, and that is based on IC curve. An indifference curve is a curve which represents all the combination of two goods which give same satisfaction to the consumer. Since all the combination on an IC curve give equal satisfaction to the consumer is indifferent among them. In other words, since all the combinations provide the same level of satisfaction to the consumer prefers them equally. So if the consumer is, if supposingly there is a combination of A, B or B, C or C, D or D, E, the consumer can choose any of the preference because in all the combinations, the satisfaction level will be same. In all the combinations, in all the combinations here, the satisfaction level will be same. The satisfaction level will be same. I believe you understood the meaning of indifference curve. The same thing is written over here in this para. To understand the indifference curves, let us consider the example of consumer who has 1 unit of food and 12 units of clothing. So supposingly, students, if that consumer wants 2 unit of food, that means one more additional unit of food. Unit of food. He is sacrificing how many units of clothing, and that we need to see. So in this example, he is ready to give up 6 units of clothing. So combination 1 is food and over here clothing. It is like 1 and 12 and it is like 2 and 6. I believe you understood. You can see the same in indifference schedule. So there are 4 combinations shown on indifference schedule. Combination A, combination B, C and D. In combination A, it is shown that 1 unit of food and 12 unit of clothing. When we increased the unit of food, there is a decrease in the unit of clothing from 12 to 6, 6 to 4, 4 to 3, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. So additional unit of food is coming in the combinations and there is a sacrifice in the level of clothing. But we should understand what is an indifference schedule. So please write an indifference schedule refers to a schedule that shows various combinations of two goods which give equal amount of satisfaction. To whom? To the consumer. And over here, schedule means table. Now, what we are going to do further? You have already drawn this individual indifference schedule and plotted food, clothing and marginal rate of substitution. That is the sacrifice in terms of clothing by getting an additional food. Now, if we plot the above schedule on a given graph, how will we be able to make a consumer indifference curve by this indifference schedule? Just try to draw along with me. So we have a combination A, B, C, D. We have food 1, 2, 3, 4. So This is x-axis, this is origin, this is y-axis. On x-axis we are plotting food units. On y-axis we are showing clothing units. Food is 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. On 1 unit of food, we have 12 unit of clothing. So over here we are showing 12 on the top, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. Okay? And 0 obviously. So this is combination A. What is combination B? 6 and 2. This is combination B. Combination C is 4 and 3. So this is 4 and this is 3. This is combination C. And combination 4 is 4 and 3. So 4 units of food and 3 units of clothing. This is combination D. Let's join all the lines. This is IC, that is indifference curve. And we had drawn this indifference curve from an indifference map. From the indifference schedule, we have drawn this indifference curve. Students, let's shift to the next concept. And the next concept is indifference map. The next concept is indifference map. So what is an indifference map? Students, indifference map is a combination of indifference curves. Indifference map is basically a combination of indifference curves. So you can write it, indifference map is a group of indifference curves, each one of which represents a given level of satisfaction. So there would be indifference curve 1, which will offer you some satisfaction. Then there will be indifference curve 2, which will offer the consumer a level of satisfaction. Then we have indifference curve 3, which will offer a different combination and level of satisfaction. You could also have indifference curve 4. So an indifference map represents the collections of many indifference curves, where each of the curve represent a certain level of satisfaction. In short, you can say that a set of indifference curves is called indifference map. An indifference map depicts the complete picture of consumer taste and preferences. In figure 4, it is shown. Let me draw the figure for you, the indifference map. It is very simple, but you should understand there would be a combination of indifference curves. This is x-axis, origin, y-axis, good x and good y. Unit is utils, that will give you satisfaction. Now we have over here, this is indifference curve 1. This is combination 1. This is indifference curve 2. This is combination 2. This is indifference curve 3, combination 3. This is indifference curve 4. This is combination 4. If I ask you a very simple question, then out of these 4 indifference curves, which is the best for you? So obviously, by general knowledge, you can say that, sir, the indifference curve which is higher will give us more level of satisfaction. So indifference curve 4 is better than indifference curve 3. Indifference curve 3 is better than 2 and 2 is better than 1. That means what? That simply means that indifference 4 will offer you maximum level of satisfaction. IC4 will offer maximum level of satisfaction. But we should understand one thing over here, that this satisfaction, that is IC4, is better than IC3, is 3 is better than 2 and 2 is better than 1. But we should also understand the consumer is always having a budget constraint. So instead of the fact that IC4 will give, rest of the factors will be independent. If I ask you what is the best IC curve over here in this indifference map, your answer would be, sir, IC4 is the best. So we will go with IC4. But supposingly if I tell you you don't have that much money to have that much satisfaction to buy the combination on IC4, indifference curve 4, in that case we also should consider the budget line or price line for the same and to choose the best IC curve. I believe you understood till here. Students, let's move to another topic, and that is popularly known as MRS, that is marginal rate of substitution. Marginal rate of substitution. As I just shared with you, that marginal rate of substitution is nothing but the rate at which the consumer is willing to substitute one good for another without changing the level of satisfaction. So over here we had seen that there is a combination of 12 and 1. That means one unit of food and 12 units of clothing, or there is 6 unit of food and 2 units of clothing, or 3 units of food or 4 unit of clothing. The combination over here, on this combination, the marginal rate of the satisfaction is equal, and that is shown by the marginal rate of substitution. So you can write that marginal rate of substitution, that is MRS, is the rate at which the consumer is willing to substitute one good for another. Without changing the level of satisfaction. So we can say that there is no change in the level of satisfaction. The same example is described in this para. So the MRS, that is the marginal rate of substitution of X and Y, supposingly there are two goods X and Y, is equal to marginal utility from X divided by marginal utility from Y. You had noticed that over here MRS is falling as the consumer has more and more units of food. He is prepared to give up less and less units of clothing, because consumer is having more and more unit of food, but his consumer is having less units of clothing. So because he is having less units of clothing, from the less units of clothing he want to sacrifice less, so he should have some units of clothing with him. There are two reasons. Number one, the want for a particular good is satiable, need to be satisfied. So that when a consumer has more of it, his intensity, speed of want decreases, because you earlier you are not having food, but now you are having food, so intensity of food will be less. Thus in our example, the consumer is having more unit of food, the intensity or desire will decrease for food. And most goods are imperfect substitutes of one another. MRS would remain constant if they could substitute one another perfectly. Why marginal rate of substitution will remain constant? Because the substitutes are imperfect. Imperfect substitutes. I believe it is okay till here. Students, let's move to the another topic, and that is properties of IC curve. That is properties of indifference curve. The first property is the indifference curve slope downward to the right. As we know, the first property is the IC curve slopes downward to the right. Just see it over here. IC curve is like this. So slopes downward to the right. I believe first point is absolutely clear. Second, the IC curve are always convex to the origin. So students, it is not concave to the origin, it is convex to the origin. See, this is the origin and it is convex to the origin. Convex to the origin. IC is convex to the origin in this graph. Why it happens? It happens because of MRS, that is marginal rate of substitution. It is convex to the origin because of the MRS, that is the marginal rate of substitution. Because we want to substitute, we want to give up less and less unit of good Y in terms of good X. IC curve can never intersect each other. The third point, IC curve never intersect each other. Just see in this diagram. I'm drawing the curve. You can draw along with me. X, origin, Y. Over here, On y-axis we have shown good y. On x-axis we are showing goods x. This is IC1. This is IC1. There can't be an IC curve like this, IC2. This is not possible. Supposingly this is point A. This is point B. This is point C. It is not possible. So IC curve can't intersect each other. Just see the text. No two different IC curve will intersect each other, although it is not necessary that they are parallel to each other. In case of intersection, the relationship becomes very logically absurd because it would show the higher and lower levels are equal. And in IC curve, I told you the higher the IC curve, more will be the level of satisfaction. So in this case, it is not possible because there is an intersection. So intersection is not possible at all. Just see it over here. IC1 and IC2 intersect at point A. Since A and B lie on IC1, they give same level of satisfaction to the consumer. Similarly, since A and C lies on IC2, just see, A and C lies on IC2, it also gives same level of satisfaction, which is not possible at all. This whole conclusion is absurd, not relevant. So they give same level of satisfaction. This implies that the combination B and C are equal in terms of satisfaction, which is not possible. But a glance will show that this is an absurd conclusion. This is an irrelevant conclusion because certainly combination C is better than combination B because it contains more units of commodity X and Y. Thus, we see that no two indifference curves can touch or cut each other, that is intersect each other. I believe you are clear till here. Let's move a bit forward. The next point talks about is very simple. The higher the IC curve represent, higher the level of satisfaction. So in normal language we can write higher IC curve, indifference curve represent greater level of satisfaction. So if the consumer is having budget or consumer is having no constraint in terms of budget, in that case he should always choose or opt for the higher IC curve, in that he will get more satisfaction. And at last, indifference curve will not touch either of the axes. Indifference curve will not touch either of the axes. First I'll make the diagram for you with the graph for you, and then we'll explain you using the text. X-axis, origin, y-axis. On y-axis we are plotting goods y. On x-axis we are plotting good x. These combination is not possible. These combination is not possible because over here, if you could see, this will become 0. So a combination with 0 is not possible. Why? Just see it over here, indifference curve. This is an indifference curve. But this is wrong because this is not possible. Another characteristic feature of IC is that it will not touch the x-axis or y-axis. Why? because this is born out of our assumption that the consumer is considering different combinations of two commodities. If a IC curve touches y-axis, that means what? The consumer is satisfied with OP and Y commodity is 0 of X commodity. This is contrary to our assumption that the consumer wants both commodities through in smaller or larger combination and larger quantities. So over here in this combination, there would be, say for example, 10 units of X and 0 units of Y. So it is not relevant. Or we can say that 0 unit of X and 20 units of Y. It is also not relevant. I believe you're clear till here. Let's move to the next topic, and that talks about budget line. Our next topic talks about budget line. So basically, students, what happens that higher IC curve denotes more level of satisfaction. So the consumer always wanted to buy or always wanted to go for higher IC. But suppose what happens, many a times you don't have that much money to spend. What you will do in that case? We can say that that indifference curve shows the taste and preferences of a consumer. In order to find out what quantities of two goods will be purchased by the household, we must know that how much expenditure the household wants to incur on these two commodities. So we should be able to understand that we don't have that much money. If I talk about, suppose we have there is a consumer and he has rupees 200 to spend on food and clothing. He only have 200 rupees. Now he should buy a combination that should be within 200. That should not go for more than 200 because he don't have that much money to buy. He should be within their budget. So on the budget line, it is good. Below the budget line, okay, he is saving. But you cannot go beyond your budget line. Why? Because you don't have that much money. In market, everything is available. We can't buy everything. Just see it over here that a higher indifference curve shows a higher level of satisfaction than a lower one. Therefore, a consumer will try to maximize the satisfaction to reach the higher possible indifference curve. But in pursuit of buying more and more goods and thus obtaining more and more satisfaction, he has to work upon two constraints. First, he has to pay the prices for the goods, and second, he has a limited money income which to purchase the goods. A consumer choice are limited by the budget available to him. As we know, his total expenditure for goods and services can fall short of the budget constraint but may not exceed. Algebraically, we can say that price of X multiplied by quantity of X plus price of Y multiplied of quantity of Y, that should be lower than equal to budget. So in our example, the budget was 200. Price of X is supposedly 10 and price of Y is supposedly 5 and quantity is 10. So 10 into 10, 100. 5 into 20, 100 equal to 200. So this is 100 plus 100 equal to 200. This is within the budget line. I can't buy 21 units of product Y and I can't buy 11 units of product X if I am following this combination. This is combination 1. I can also choose combination 2. In combination 2, the price of X is 10 and supposedly I am buying only 5 units. That means 50. The price of Y is 5. I am buying 30 units. That is 150. So in total, I can spend 200. I am within the budget line. I am within my criteria. So there is no problem at all. Let me draw the price line for you. X, origin, Y. On y-axis we are showing good Y. On x-axis we are showing good X. This is your budget line. This is your budget line. You only have this much money, or price line. You can't spend more than this. So supposingly if you want to spend over here, it is not possible. We don't have budget to do that. We can't buy at H because we don't have that much money to do that, because we don't have that much finance or that much budget. Suppose there is a combination K. Consumer is saving over here. Consumer is saving some funds. So on this budget line, if you are falling on this budget line, if your IC is falling on this budget line, that means you are spending all your money. In our example, it is 200 rupees. I believe we are clear. Let us move ahead now. The next concept is consumer equilibrium. The next concept is consumer equilibrium. So students, when consumer will be at equilibrium? A consumer is an equilibrium when he is deriving the maximum possible satisfaction from goods, and therefore there is no position to rearrange his purchase of goods. But in calculating the consumer's equilibrium, there are various assumptions. What are the various assumptions of consumer equilibrium? The first assumption is the consumer has a given indifference map which shows his scale of preferences for various combinations of goods X and Y, and he has chosen the best. The budget is fixed, so he is having limited money income. His budget is fixed. Prices of goods X and goods Y will not fluctuate, so it is fixed, constant. All goods are homogeneous goods and divisible goods. The consumer acts rationally, calculate cost and benefit, and maximize his satisfaction. So over here I'm drawing this graph for you. X, Y, origin. This is goods X. Over here we are showing on y-axis good Y. Now this is our budget line, and we'll try to show the various IC curves. IC1, IC2, IC3, IC4. So there are 4 combinations given over here, but the combinations which are falling on this is R, Q, T. Supposingly R, Q, T. These 3 combinations are falling on the budget line. So as a rational consumer, as a consumer who wants to be in equilibrium, we'll be choosing IC2. Why? Because IC3, IC4, we don't have budget to buy that. We don't have budget to buy combination plotted on IC3 and IC4. So given an option, IC2 is the best. IC2 is the best combination and consumer will be in equilibrium. Consumer will be in equilibrium at IC2. I believe we are clear. So students, that's it for this lecture. We'll continue in the coming lectures further. Thank you.